The first time we saw one, the first time we encountered a shark, it was a bewildering experience for us. At first intimidated and on edge, my heart slowed down, but fear quickly turned into a calming sense of humility, mixed with the feeling of having experienced something a little crazy and magnificent.
And then we went to other sites where we saw 2, 3, 4. The dives followed one after another, and the sharks became more and more numerous, present both outside and inside the lagoon, as well as along the shores, just a few meters from the beach, where we counted up to 14 blacktip sharks around us.
Sharks everywhere, until at the end of our journey we found ourselves facing a wall where it was hard to even count them. In this environment, where you could encounter 200 to 300 sharks per dive, squads of leopard rays glided by, massive Napoleon wrasses, and schools of fish by the thousands. And on the seabed, covered with shimmering coral draperies, hundreds of other diverse species burrowed and lived. On the team, no one had ever seen such a gathering, such a concentration of marine life in the same place.
Watching this bustling dance of life, we felt like privileged witnesses to a unique and exceptional spectacle. But was this environment really that exceptional? Then we remembered our very first dive in Polynesia, when, coming out of the water after seeing a shark for the first time in our lives, and while we were inwardly thrilled, the instructor told us, almost apologetically, that he was sorry the site was currently so empty.
Strangely, what was incredible for us was disappointing for him, because with his experience, he knew exactly what this site had to offer at its best. He had seen it evolve and change over the years, and was therefore aware of what it had lost. Here, he told us, there used to be many more corals before the last bleaching event. Today, many are smothered by algae, and the whole environment that relied on these fish homes has been disrupted. Many sharks ended up leaving.
We hadn't seen any of this, and it was only later, when we dived into similar ecosystems, but this time healthy ones, that we understood what he meant. During our first dives, we mistook a slightly damaged reef for paradise, which, even though it wasn't, was still far more impressive and rich than anything Theo and I had seen in our short diving lives. With only our own experience as a point of comparison, never having had the chance to dive on a perfectly healthy coral reef, we hadn't noticed that the wildlife at this site was smaller and less abundant.
In reality, what we had called extraordinary was only so by contrast with the relatively unhealthy and degraded environments where we had learned to dive. This single experience had become our reference point, in a way, the natural state. Think about it. When was the last time you saw the forest or the seabed closest to your home as they are when they're healthy? As for me, certainly never, because as far back as I can remember, I've always known Réunion's lagoon, where I grew up, as being partially degraded. And this state, that of a reef characterized by tired corals and where many of the big fish have already been taken, became, for me during my childhood, the norm. 25 years later, like many of those who have known this lagoon for a long time, I sometimes find myself saying while swimming there, seriously, it's gotten even worse. While most tourists, who haven't known it before, are laughing out loud.
It's crazy how many fish there are here. It was really amazing.
From that point of view, seeing 3 sharks in 1 hour of diving is more than good.
One might wonder, deep down, what's so wrong with taking the decline as normal and the normal as exceptional. In fact, considering what has been a bit damaged as little corners of paradise says a lot about the general state of our ecosystems and also poses a problem in the long term. Because most of us, having only ever known already damaged natural environments, have internalized it as the norm. By ignoring what nature might have looked like before, we risk not seeing our environments as degraded, since this state has often already become normal for our generation. From then on, anything that is doing well, in a sense, goes beyond the limits, is outside our norm, and therefore is perceived by us as exceptional.
And then there's this difficulty in knowing what condition an environment would be in if it were healthy. To perceive the changes, the declines that we haven't witnessed. This means that each generation redefines what is natural, based on their own experience. And, over time, without realizing it, ends up getting used to what is considered normal. Today, in many parts of the world, some species have become so rare that no one remembers the times when they were abundant. Those memories have been lost, and the disappearance of a rare species ends up feeling like something expected, something normal.
That's where the danger lies. How can we know what we've lost if we've never seen it? How can we preserve and protect if we don't know the exact state of what came before us? Who among us today wouldn't find it incredible to come across a wolf in the forest? If we're not even able to identify what we're losing, then maybe one day our children will think it's extraordinary to see a fish swimming in anything other than lemon juice.
In the same way, if we could teleport a fisherman from today back to the beginning of the last century, it's very likely he would feel like he's pulling in extraordinary, enormous catches in his nets. Given that over the past 50 years we've taken 90% of the big fish from the oceans, and in doing so, we've changed the baseline for entire generations of people who live off the sea all around the world.
And it's precisely because, over the past 50 years, more than 20% of coral reefs have disappeared, and the vast majority are in poor condition. That environments with relatively few corals, containing fewer and fewer small animals, and even fewer large ones, have become what we now expect.
Except that in reality, if coral reefs are healthy, they are naturally populated by large numbers of big fish and sharks. Because underwater, in many healthy marine ecosystems, the biomass pyramids are inverted.
So, if you weighed all the animals in a vibrant coral reef, you would find much more mass at the top of the food chain than at its base. In some cases, predators can account for nearly 85% of the total animal biomass in a reef. It's a bit as if, in the vast plains of the Serengeti, there were on average 5 times more lions than herbivores.
This oddity of an inverted pyramid, which may sound strange to our land-dwelling ears, is mostly the norm underwater when ecosystems are at their peak. Basically, the small animals at the bottom of the food chain are able to replenish themselves and grow so quickly that, thanks to their continuous production of organic matter, a very large number of predators can find enough to eat.
But don't think that all healthy marine ecosystems look like this. On the scale of the oceans, life is rarely as concentrated as it is in coral reefs, which have always been hotspots of biodiversity. And even though they cover only a tiny percentage of ocean space, they are home, at some point in their lives, to nearly 25% of the planet's fish. And here, in these images, we are in a channel, a setting where the nutrient-rich currents attract and concentrate a great abundance of life.
Elsewhere in the oceans, life is more dispersed and doesn't necessarily thrive near the coasts. In fact, if we look at it in terms of quantity, we see that all the fish, sharks, marine mammals, mollusks, and other crustaceans together make up less than 1% of all marine fauna. In reality, the vast majority of ocean life is made up of tiny creatures that aren't big enough to be seen with the naked eye. A tiny, invisible population, but one that makes up 98% of the ocean's biomass.
If you collected a liter of seawater near the surface to study it under a microscope, you would find, suspended and swimming around, tens of billions of tiny microorganisms. On average, in every liter, there are nearly 1 million microalgae, 5 million unicellular organisms, 1 billion bacteria, and tens of billions of viruses. It is estimated that the viruses present in the oceans alone contain as many carbon atoms as 250 million hypothetical humpback whales.
Invisible to the naked eye, in the waters near the surface where sunlight penetrates, there is a large quantity of phytoplankton, microscopic organisms that largely drive the health of our oceans. Although it represents only 1% of the biomass of photosynthetic organisms on our planet, this plant plankton, which has a short lifespan but reproduces quickly, is responsible for nearly 45% of the primary production on a global scale. Because of this continuous renewal, phytoplankton is at the base of many food chains and makes the existence of our inverted pyramids possible.
Taking a gulp of seawater means ingesting a nutrient-rich microbial soup. The incredible performance of phytoplankton in its ability to renew itself allows for the production of half of our planet's oxygen and contributes to the regulation of atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. Because by fixing some of the dissolved CO2 in the ocean in its body, plant-based plankton helps regulate the climate, and this is also indirectly responsible for the largest migration, animal migration, on our planet.
Every day, across all the oceans, a little before sunset, zooplankton, made up of a myriad of tiny microscopic animals found in the first few hundred meters below the surface, rises up to feed on phytoplankton. And when, in the early morning, this animal-based plankton dives back down to the depths to hide from predators, it takes with it the CO2 fixed in the photosynthetic organisms it has ingested. So, every day, again and again, this daily migration that follows the rhythms of the sun helps to vertically transport energy and matter while mixing the water column.
This animation shows the changes in chlorophyll concentrations at the surface of the oceans over several years. You can see the signature of plankton activity, which often concentrates along the coasts and the equator, while shifting slightly with the seasons and often correlating with the presence of cold, nutrient-rich currents. These upwellings of deep water, which are mainly concentrated along the edges of ocean basins, have biomasses and biodiversity that, although more diluted, are often greater than those of coral reefs.
And faced with such an abundance of microscopic life activity at the surface of the waters, one might be tempted to think that, on our planet, the diversity of life is concentrated in the seas. But strangely, that's not the case. Because in reality, even though 99% of the available volume for life to thrive on Earth is found in the oceans, they only harbor a small 13% of the world's recorded living species. The explanation for this seemingly extreme discrepancy lies in the fact that the conditions beneath the surface are, compared to those on the continents, relatively stable over the long term. A characteristic that is less conducive to the emergence of new species.
And then, we must also take into account that for now, in oceanic environments, we have only been able to identify and describe about 280,000 different species, while it is estimated that there are between 2 and 30 million yet to be discovered. In other words, the vast majority of marine biodiversity is still unknown. Now, more than ever, it is essential to pay attention to what we don't know, to understand what environments looked like, and what they look like now, so that we stop seeing broken things as normal and natural.
Because deep down, as beautiful as this view is, it shouldn't feel exceptional to be in its presence. In just a few decades, a few centuries, we've forgotten that paradises, many of which are now lost, were, for a long time, the norm. These biodiversity hotspots, spectacular refuges of abundant life, have now become the exception. It's up to us to make sure that opulence and abundance become the rule again, that the exceptionally well-preserved becomes the norm.
Thank you to the whole Top Dive team for accompanying us in Polynesia. Go for it, dive with them if you get the chance. Clearly, projects as ambitious as these couldn't happen without everyone who supports us and brings a breath of fresh air and a little funding to our projects. So, toss a little coin into our hat.
Blue, 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 blue.